Shakespeare said, "The masks we wear to fulfill our roles on the stage of life, in time imprison us when we forget who we truly are behind them." If it is true that we're all guilty of mask wearing, then maybe we should ask the question, what are these masks and what is behind them? We often associate mask wearing with disguise, that worn by the superhero here to save us, or the villain with sinister intent seeking to deceive or harm us. Meanwhile, the ordinary human being is seen as the real thing and lives authentically among us. Rarely do we assign them a mask. But we are all born into humankind as helpless and dependent creatures who have big needs that we look to others to meet. As we grow, we develop a personality in order to try and meet those needs that are essential for life. We all need a sense that we matter and that someone is concerned for our well-being. We call that love and attention. We need to develop our personal autonomy. Our no needs to be recognised and our feelings appreciated. We call that power. It's also important that we are taught principles for living well and have an ability to relate to others. We call that wisdom. Love, power, and wisdom. It's important we have a balance of these in healthy measure to navigate the challenges of life, but often because of different relationships and experiences that we have, we often feel forced to focus on choosing and being highly efficient in one of them, because that was the ingredient required for our needs to be met. We are often then deficient in the other two. Some of us lack love, some of us lack power, and some of us lack wisdom. Masks then are to cover up what we know we lack. If I excel in one area, no one will notice that I missed the classes in the others. Often the recognition of our mask wearing comes as the result of a catastrophic event in our lives when we realise that how we have functioned for so long no longer serves us. We then begin to do a whole lot of undoing that goes back to our childhoods and questions the experiences that were part of the mask creation process. It's ironic that trauma seems to create them, and trauma also seems to reveal them. When we begin to see what is under the mask, we can also find the courage to begin the journey of transformation. The journey is not easy, but also worth it, as it is a doorway to wholeness. So what are some of the masks that we wear? Well, I can tell you about the mask I wore for 44 years. Daily, along with my washing and dressing, I would faithfully put on this mask. It was a very nice mask, one that had been fashioned to fit me perfectly since my childhood, but a mask all the same. Masks are not grotesque. They're often very admirable and virtuous. That's why we don't think we need to get rid of them. The truth is, we are more likely to polish and protect them as they cover up our true identity and our deepest fears. Our lives are made easier because of them. My mask was the mask of love and positivity. I learned early on that my needs would be met if I was a good girl, a compliant, agreeable, dutiful daughter. I came to believe that love was something that had to be earned. This made me a giver. Now that sounds grand, but what the mask was covering up was a very deep fear that there wasn't enough love to go round, and to get, you must give, and to be loved, you must be needed. You may say, but surely that can't be a bad thing. Well, no, but you soon come to realise that it's worn at the expense of your own needs, always putting others before yourself in some sacrificial way. There's a saying, you set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You can imagine it doesn't end well. You might not relate to my mask. You may have chosen another mask, the mask of power. This mask is worn by those who think they will be rewarded for their strength and achievement and can control life by always appearing competent and able. We demand power by asserting ourselves, but it is worn at the expense of our own feelings and a refusal to be vulnerable and recognise our own weaknesses and failings. Or you may have chosen the mask of serenity. This mask is worn by those who think they can escape the difficulties and vulnerabilities of life by being self-sufficient and prefer comfort over conflict. We withdraw into our own little world, neither asserting or complying, keeping ourselves to ourselves in the hope that we will preserve our sanity. In a very demanding world, we employ agreeableness to avoid rejection. We fear being abandoned or unaccepted by our peers. You see, masks are not only how we try to get our needs met, but also how we then cope when we find our needs haven't been met. When we don't get what we want, we develop certain coping strategies to deal with loss and disappointment. We may adopt the mask of positivity. You will have met people who, regardless of what has happened to them, they put a positive spin on it. It's okay, no worries, no problem. Anything to avoid a scene. Meanwhile, they feel unacknowledged, unimportant and unfulfilled. We live in denial in the attempt to avoid facing anything painful or negative. We may adopt the mask of competency. We all know people who just need to get things done, and they need it to be done properly. This mask hides their belief that nobody loves an unproductive failure. One must put aside their own feelings while they frantically run on the treadmill of achievement. We may adopt a mask of reactivity. We let our emotions spill out in an attempt to cover the lack of trust we have in our own wisdom, looking to others to mirror back to us our own emotional state to reignite our confidence. So masks correspond to what is undeveloped and repressed in us and hide our deepest fears. By looking a little deeper beneath the surface, we can find clues to unscramble our distorted understanding of ourselves and find the courage to realise our best selves and express who we are fully. Do you fear to be seen as imperfect, inefficient, incapable, inadequate? Are you afraid to be thought of as unimportant, uninteresting, uninformed, unintelligent, uncertain? Do you shudder at the idea that someone might realise that you're insecure, incomplete, impotent? Or do you live each day trying to hide the fact that you might be unreliable, unhappy, unsafe, unacceptable? You may have recognised some of the fears you have, the masks you wear to cover them, and how you ultimately lose your true self to them. I want to invite you to go beyond what you fear, because we can be the gift we were born to be if we would only be brave enough to take off the mask.